Welcome to Technado with Don Pizzette, featuring sysadmin expert Don Pizzette, security specialist Daniel Lowry, and Peter.
Hello and welcome to Technado with Don Pizzette. I'm your host, Peter Van Rysdam, joined as always by Don Pizzette, who is up in my right there. How you doing, Don?
I am doing great. You know, starting to wind down Cybersecurity Awareness Month, so I'm looking forward to November when we no longer have to be aware of cybersecurity.
Yeah, we got 11 months off, and then we get to focus on it again. Yep. And Daniel, the same for you, I assume?
Yeah, I'm actually doing my best to bring awareness to Cybersecurity Month. I'm wearing this shirt all month. Every day. Haven't washed it. It's my Red Seed shirt. I get so many people that always ask me, what does that mean? And I'm like, if I told you, I'd have to kill you.
You're the people I get to have.
Yes.
Well, then November.
I'll send it to you in an email. Click the link. It'll take you to a page and describes what happens.
That shirt can just stand up at the end of the month.
Yeah,
and we are joined in the last box there by Roey Eliyahu, who is the CEO and co-founder at Salt Security. How you doing today?
Doing great. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to doing this podcast with you.
Yeah, not as excited as we are to have you here and to get to know you. And Daniel's already been, before we started the podcast, peppering you with all these questions about top secret things. But let's go ahead and find out the things you can actually tell us about your history in our first segment, Rapid Fire Questions.
Who do you work for?
What's new?
Who are you?
What's happening?
What's wrong with you?
All right, in this segment, what we have are 5 rapid-fire questions. You'll be given 1 minute to answer each one. If you run too long, Peter will buzz you with his buzz-o-matic buzzer, and then we'll move on to the next one. So it'll be a great chance to learn a little bit about you and what you do. So let's kick it off with the first question.
Yeah, so I mentioned you're with Salt Security, but I want to kind of go a little bit before that. You were part of the IDF and the cybersecurity unit there, and I'm just curious how that prepared you for your life after the military here.
Yes, I think the military background was definitely kind of the core in my background. So I started programming when I was probably 9, started working as a freelancer when I was 11. But in the military, it was actually the first kind of military-grade cybersecurity experience, right? Up until that point, for me, looking backwards, was only, kind of junior stuff. When you get to the military, you're experiencing what is cybersecurity at military in a national kind of level. So from all defensive perspective, all different type of cybersecurity attack vectors, from a defensive perspective, from an offensive perspective, the best of breed type of defensive mechanisms. So it's really helped me to get my expertise in cybersecurity all around, and also seeing how APIs emerge to be one of the most critical attack vectors.
Now, after your military service, you went on to co-found Salt Security, and usually when people create a company, it's because they're trying to solve some need, a gap in the market. You just mentioned APIs. Is that what Salt Security does?
Yes. So Salt really is all about to make it safe for companies to innovate by protecting their APIs. So we protect any type of web application, mobile application, microservices, IoT, anything that leverage an API will help companies to discover their APIs and uncover shadow APIs. Will help them to prevent attacks in real time, and finally to remediate vulnerabilities and improve their API security posture. So that's what Salt Security does in 5 seconds.
That's pretty cool stuff, because obviously there can be a lot of interesting things lurking around inside of an API. But it strikes me is that you have this military background, then you kind of apparently moved into doing some military cybersecurity training, and now you're into securing up APIs. How do you make that jump? What drew you into that type of security?
Yes, that's an excellent question, because, from very young age, I'm an entrepreneur by heart. So for me, in terms of the training that we did, we founded like a training courses for cybersecurity to help people get prepared to the IDF cybersecurity units. And we just saw a gap in the market. But for me, it was never my passion to do any kind of training. It was more to solve a problem in a worldwide scale and drive a huge impact to the world. So for me, the impact of the training was only limited to Israel, versus solving the API security issue or problem is definitely something that will drive huge impact to the world. So that's why when we thought about Salt, we immediately shifted all of our focus to Salt and nothing else.
Now, I went back and saw a blog post that you wrote earlier in the year talking about how much more reliant people are on technology now with COVID and working from home and that type of thing. I've asked a lot of people that we've had on here, cybersecurity people, about how they've seen cybersecurity change with COVID, but specific to APIs, have you seen any big changes in terms of how those are affected during this crisis?
Yes, absolutely. I think API security gets a lot of attention during COVID specifically, because if you think about it, APIs are the driver for any digital systems, right? So when we're doing this podcast, using Zoom, it's all based APIs. We pay, through our mobile banking app, it's an API. We shop online because we cannot go physically. So everything shifting online all translate to more usage of more APIs, more sensitive data in those APIs, because we sign up to more online services. Companies are shifting to digital platforms because they cannot have business physically. So all of that increases the sensitivity of APIs and the need for protecting those APIs.
All right, Roey, just because I got to know, you're in that space. Out of the OWASP API top 10 security issues, which one worries you the most?
By far, number one on the list. There is a reason why it's number one, the bulk and object level authorization. I think it's one of the most critical gaps, all top 10, but by far, I think we're seeing, if you look at a pie chart of the breaches and vulnerabilities, we think that, big percentage of it, it's definitely the number one, because it's very common and also the hardest to solve from a security perspective, because tools today cannot protect against this specific one specifically, in addition to the rest of the top 10.
That keeps me up at night, too, just trying to figure out what it is.
Peter's just losing sleep every day.
Yeah. No, I'm glad we had a couple seconds left, and I just can't gloss over the fact that you said you were freelance programming at 11. What were you doing, and who hired you?
Yeah. So basically I started programming when I was 9. Went to classes, got super curious about programming and started to build some stuff. And through online forums, to be honest, I started to find some, small jobs about doing things on websites, some PHP, some action scripts, some all very old stuff. And I was just paid by cash. I had no idea the concept of IRS by any chance. And I just got cash by envelopes, and my mom used to ask me who's sending you money and why.
It's that man in the van, Mom.
That sounds like the mob, cash and envelopes, just kind of people handing
Listen,
off.
we need you to make this application for us, if you would.
It'd be a shame if someone were to infiltrate your systems here. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, looking backwards, I see I was like charging almost nothing compared to what should have been charged. But it was amazing experience, and making even not a lot of money as being in elementary school.
I could have done that at 11, but I was too busy eating dirt.
Man, you got dirt? That's great. Well, I wanted to, while we have you here, get your take on an article we actually covered a little bit last year in our new segment, Deja News.
Deja
News.
Take it over for a second there. All right, so we're looking back at an article from appsecure.security. This is a blog post called "How I Could Have Hacked Your Uber Account." And before we get your take, Rory, I want to ask Don. So,
sure.
Can you kind of give us a recap of what this was? 'Cause I know we did talk about this last year.
Yeah. So basically, what happened is Uber had 2 different APIs that were publicly exposed that would leak the UUID, or the unique identifier, for Uber customers, and it would be attached to not just their UUID but their phone number. So it gave you enough information to be active on. Then you were able to take that information and pivot and apply that against the API to get pretty much all the information about those user accounts. And so it was all really built around an API that just wasn't properly secured. A researcher discovered it, reported it, it was triaged and corrected, and then responsibly disclosed months later. So this wasn't a massive breach where all the customer data got out, but potentially it could have, right? So anytime you have an open, I shouldn't say an open API because this was unintentionally open, but when you have a non-secured API, you potentially could be handing out your entire database to people and not even know what's happening.
And is this something you come across a lot, Roy, this kind of Same problem at other companies?
Yes, it's extremely, we see it in almost every company. So probably 9 out of 10 companies that we are interacting with or working with in any phase, if we do any type of vulnerability research, 9 out of 10, we find critical vulnerabilities in a matter of days, of 2 days even, like Uber one. I think that's going back to your previous question, what worries me the most of the top 10? You can clearly see in the Uber case, there was 2 of the top 10 there. So number 3, excessive data exposure. Essentially, they exposed the UID of the drivers by simply you submit a phone number as mentioned, and you can get the UID. By itself, it's not very useful, but they also had the A1, the BOLA vulnerability. You can use the UID to get a token. So essentially, it's like to get a password for any driver, right? So I can simply go and do whatever I want. So it even goes beyond exfiltrating the database, because you can do everything. You can disable, for example, an account to their entire fleet, or you can do cancellation of things, or you can modify a lot of things. Essentially, everything you can do as a Uber user. So that can create a huge revenue impact for Uber, in addition to the data loss that will result in a big fine.
What would you say it is that that makes this a prevalent problem, that people are putting all this information in APIs and tokens that are accessible by the end user? Is it because they just think that, well, no one's going to look at this, right? Here it is, all wrapped up in a jot, and I'm good to go, right? Why is this happening so often?
Yeah, so I think like if you look at the excessive data exposure aspect, why even the UID was exposed, as you mentioned, many companies develop an API and they are the consumer of that API, right? They develop their mobile app, you install, and the mobile app interact with their APIs. And sometimes developer had the notion that if it's not exposed in the interface, no one can access it, which is obviously not true, because you only need to sniff the information and you can see everything. And the reason why it happens on the back end, because typically you have an object that contains all of these data, and they simply pull the entire object as is. That's the easiest way, and just send everything. And then the front-end developer, right, and the most practical level, you have a front-end developer that requires certain parameters. So they basically sends everything and said, choose whatever you need. So you don't need to call me again to add more parameters. So essentially they're exposing more than what they need. And obviously it's creating a security issue. I think that's for number 3. The reason why the UID could have been used to get tokens, that's a very common issue, because you have potentially an API, a normal API, you have probably, thousands or tens of thousands of potential cases when you need to validate each one. So it's enough that one is being missed for a proper authorization check, and that's it. And Uber, by the way, it wasn't the first one, not even the 5th one having this type of vulnerability. They have a lot of other vulnerabilities were disclosed from different kinds.
One thing I've wondered about in the olden days, if you developed an API, you just made it internally available, and that was it. It wasn't available to the outside world, and that provided a lot of protection. But mobile apps kind of destroyed that, right? So if people are on cellular phones, they could be in any country with any IP. We can't kind of protect the API that way. So one challenge we have is that if we have to expose our API to the internet, in theory, anybody could find it, and once they find it, anybody could, just keep working at it until they figure out information. Is there any way that people are able to securely connect, like an authenticated mechanism or something like that, so that only the authorized applications are able to connect to the API, or is that just not something that's realistic?
So first of all, I'll extend that. As you said, that it's not, only mobile apps can be single page application, services, any type of device, IoT, that by definition needs to be exposed for you to use. But it's not realistic, because essentially you are the consumer, right? If you're the consumer of an e-commerce website or a financial, like I'm logging into my bank account, there is nothing that make me different than an attacker, right? Except my intent. So I can access, I can modify, and I can send whatever I want. I can modify the API call however I want as an attacker to the servers. And because I'm a legitimate user, I can simply sign up, get an account, or install one account and use that to find vulnerability in the API. So unfortunately, you have to be able to monitor your APIs for malicious behavior, for abnormal behavior that try to manipulate the API, try to exploit vulnerabilities in the API.
So let's pretend for a moment that you were the one who detected this, this Uber vulnerability, and you found where that information was being leaked. What is the advice you give to them to correct that?
Yes, it's an excellent question, right? That's essentially, I'll put Salt aside because we created Salt to help to mitigate all of those issues. But put that aside. First of all, you have to map all of the data that you expose. So you have to create an API inventory that includes all the requests, all parameters, all the response, and all parameters. You need to classify all these parameters and to know exactly where do you expose what. So if they had that in place, they would know they exposed there a UUID of drivers that should not be exposed. There is, the user do not need this UUID. So obviously you don't need to expose it. So eliminate any unnecessary exposure. That's number one. Secondarily, you have to map out, understand all the business logic flows in the API, and to ensure you have proper authorization check. So when you have a submit of a phone number, for example, it can be any type of ID, you need to make sure that you have the authorization check to get the data on the output only belongs to the specific phone number, as an example, or the specific driver UID. So every time you see sensitive data on the way out, you need to ask yourself, did we do all the authorization checks needed on the request to ensure this data can only be sent if it was properly authenticated, properly have authorization, the right authorization in place? How you get this inventory, that's the hard part, obviously, but there is no easy way around it. Otherwise, you will have those vulnerabilities.
It also seems like it would be a massive lift to not only do that, correct? Because that seems like a lot of work. And then if you have a large enough web application that is constantly adding in new features and other features are being maybe upgraded or updated and taken away and things are just constantly changing, how do you manage mapping all that data and then mapping all of that out through the API with changes happening in real time? How I would assume that's extremely difficult.
Extremely difficult. I think there are three things that changed that you touch on one big of them that made API so vulnerable, and you see more and more breaches and incidents because people tend to think, wow, we had APIs for 20 years. What's changed, right? And there are three key changes. One is that we moved from APIs that expose very limited data to very sensitive data. Everything is available online for us. So obviously APIs expose very sensitive data, and all the time, every time you have high price for an attacker, you have more incidents. That's number one. Number two, the attack surface definitely increased exponentially because we have more functionality, right? We can do much more now in our, for example, banking app than what we could 5 or 7 years ago. And all of this new functionality resulted in invoking thousands of different API calls with hundreds of thousands of parameters on the back end, when every one of them can be a vulnerability. And the last one that you actually mentioned is the frequent changes, right? So we moved to an agile development, CI/CD, when anyone can add new functionality. In opposed to the old days, we had release every 6 or 12 months. So any type of manual approach will break, right? Because you cannot keep up with the frequent, the changes frequency. So the reality, you need to have an automated mechanism to understand what change happened, what if they added new sensitive data, new API endpoints, new parameters, if there's a new API meeting my security requirements and went through all the security checks. And then lastly, in production, you have to keep monitoring for all of these, top 10 and more threats to ensure that those APIs are not being exploited. And I'm sorry, my answer is not like,
No, that was good.
Think,
it was a good answer. Yeah.
But that's,
it was the truth.
Yes.
Yeah, well, unfortunately for us, Uber has patched this, so no more free rides. They did pay out $6,500 last year as a bounty for it, so that was nice to see as well for the person who did the right thing and reported it the right way. So getting back to Salt real quick, so if I know there's a lot of people probably sitting home right now who are going, well, my company has an API. Am I doing this stuff? Am I doing this right? So how would people reach out to you if they wanted to find out more about Salt Security?
Sure. So first of all, can you reach out to me directly? It's my name, Loey at salt.security, not .com, just .security. That's one. You can go to the website, do request a demo, and you'll be answered immediately. So that's another option. So feel free to use one of the two. And would love, again, to share more information, more insights, more best practices, because we are seeing these attacks and problems on a daily basis.
Fantastic. And I know you guys, you won some awards recently as well, if I'm not mistaken. One from Gartner, and what was the other one? You just won one a couple weeks ago, right?
Yes. So we have won the Signet 16 Innovation Award, and we won the Gartner Cool Vendor in the API space. And before that, we also won the OWASP Innovation Fair. So it's like the innovation contest of OWASP. But actually, the audience choose the winner. So we won this as well, and the audience voted Salt is the most innovative company, which is always very exciting to hear that they have this type of validation from our audience.
Yeah, it's nice to hear when it comes from the audience, because I feel like the other ones are always, who's paying the most money. In
It's a
advertising.
fashion show.
Yeah, but the People's Choice Awards, those are the ones you like.
Those are the good ones.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time with us today. And before I let you go, is there anything else coming up you guys got going on? Any events or things like that we should mention?
Yeah, so we continuously, doing more webinars, roundtables, discussing the API security, bringing more, forward-thinking type of security individuals to share their insights. So definitely you can get updated. You can go to our website. You can contact us, and we'd be happy to add anyone that wants to the list, so we can get access to very private events with very cool and useful information to how to better protect their APIs.
Perfect. I've just added Daniel to your mailing list, so you're welcome, Daniel. But thanks for taking the time with us today, and I appreciate you coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, and stay tuned, everybody. We've got a little bit more Technado with Don Pezet coming up right after this quick break.
The IT Pro TV app is available for iOS and tvOS. The modern user interface makes navigation easy. Recently watched videos can be found on the home screen, as well as our daily live streams. Choose landscape mode for larger viewing. Access the entire course library by clicking on the play icon. Navigate our content by category, certification, and job role. Learn where you want and when you want as a premium annual member by downloading episodes for offline viewing. Watch on the go and pick up later on any of your favorite devices. So head to the App Store and download the IT Pro TV app.
Welcome back to Technado with Don Pezet, and thank you to Roy for joining us. And it doesn't sound like anyone's going to get killed for any of the things we talked about or asked, right?
Yeah, it just disappeared.
It depends on if you're hearing this podcast before or after editing.
That's a good point. Yeah. They are hearing it before, I'm guessing. They can do that. But we have a lot of news to get to, so let's go ahead and jump in with our first article, which is at Quantum Magazine. That's one M shared in Quantum and Magazine. So
Quantum Magazine.
Or it's Quantum Agazine. And the article is to boldly go...
the planetarium.
Yeah.
Yes. To boldly go where no internet protocol has gone before. So Vint Cerf helped create the internet 40 years ago, and he's still working to connect people around the world and off it.
Yeah, Vint Cerf, big name in the internet's history, is evaluating new problems that we've got. And one of those problems is internet in space. I should have said that with more drama.
In space.
There we go. It's important. You got to get the delivery right. So, one challenge that we have, and anybody who's used satellite internet knows this, right? On satellite internet, your latency is insane. It's usually about 1 full second. And 1 second doesn't sound like a lot, but when we're used to like 30 to 40 milliseconds for a communication, something taking a full second is a long time. And that's because you got to go from the Earth's surface all the way up to a satellite and all the way back down again. And then you likely have that same return trip on the way back. So that is a huge delay. Well, extend that out to the moon. Extend that even further to Mars, right? How are we supposed to communicate with Mars when your latency is now minutes in some cases, right? So in those scenarios, our traditional networks don't function. Our traditional protocols, so TCP/IP specifically, just doesn't work. The delay is too great, right? So you have things like your retransmit window that would be retransmitting everything since the window is so large. So Vint Cerf is working on creating a new suite of protocols, which he's calling DTN, or Delay Tolerant Networking, that is networking built around the principles of TCP/IP that's high speed and reliable, but can withstand huge delays in packet delivery. So it's neat stuff.
I thought DTM was down to message.
Down to, yeah, well, down to message.
Yeah, this is N.
Oh, is it N?
N. Yeah, DTN.
What is the N? Network?
Yeah, what
Network?
was that?
Delay tolerant networking.
Networking.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So this is
networking.
It's funny. Yeah, it's funny because I actually saw Vint Cerf about 20 years ago do a interview on the thing, and they said, "What are you up to now, Vint? You invented the internet. I mean, how do you top that?" He's like, "I'm working on an interplanetary protocol for sending messages through internet." I was like, that's kind of cool. And then here we are.
Well, he saw
talking
The
about how he's
Martian,
done.
and where it took like 12 hours for him to send text messages back and
message.
forth, and it's like,
said,
he's
"That
like
is
that's
some
no good.
bullshit
That is no
right
good.
there."
We could have taught this guy how to make potatoes out of his poop a lot earlier if we had better messaging.
So, I mean, you put a positive spin on that, but let me put a negative spin on it, which is here we are 20 years later. He's still working on it.
It's true. So apparently it's not easy.
Well, no, it just means that's the kind of delay he's tolerant of.
So I read the other day that they're talking about putting 4G on the moon. I guess.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I saw that as well. Yeah.
And I'm like, can we get it up
Just
on that
4?
part on 39th Avenue first, where my calls always drop off?
Yeah, that'd be
here
a great idea.
in Gainesville?
Yeah, you know, that is an argument people make about exploration and stuff. Is like, we're trying to get to other planets, but we haven't even fully explored ours yet. The bottom of the ocean is still largely a mystery, and things. I saw the abyss. I know it's down there.
Yeah, that's where the lizard
Aliens.
people are.
That's right. They got cool glowy faces and luminescence all over them.
Water tubes or something.
It was a cool movie.
But it is neat. I don't expect to see this protocol used terrestrially here on Earth because DTN, as it is right now, has a huge amount of overhead. And that's because it has to be ready to retransmit practically every single packet transmitted. So it doesn't have those larger TCP retransmit windows that we're used to. It's got much, much smaller ones. But in exchange for that overhead, you get higher speed transfers, and you, in theory, would have reliable communications to Mars with a significant delay, but you'd have the communications.
Yeah, and he was saying how it's kind of like a store and forward kind of technology where, hey, just because I can't actually talk to you right now doesn't mean I should disregard these packets. I'll just kind of hold on to them until you do get into an area where I can speak with you so I can transmit this on to the next place.
AKA email.
AKA email. Yeah.
And I was reading where they'll be able to get data into deep space if they put a repeater on Uranus.
Oh.
So,
Yeah, well,
That
would
was
work.
horrible.
Sorry, I was working on that one for a little bit there.
we have a soundboard. That deserved a rim shot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. I was like, I don't have any sounds about Uranus.
Or crickets. One or the other.
don't have any sounds about Uranus.
Yeah,
That's
that's the
close.
closest I've got.
It's like Taco Bell, Taco Bell.
Right there. We just got more use out of the soundboard than we have this
Yeah,
whole
it's true.
podcast
It's just
series.
well, the cable's working today, so
It's always helpful.
so I'll get some stuff ready here for our next article here, which is from Tom's Hardware. Microsoft is rolling. Hold on, I've got a Microsoft sound somewhere. Oh, there it is. Microsoft rolling out Windows 10 October 2020 update with UI changes and throttled availability. What is throttled availability? Because that sounds bad. I know it's bad
Yeah.
with my cell phone provider.
Well, so every time Microsoft rolls out a big update, we usually get just a flood of headlines like Microsoft ruins everyone's computers, people die because of the update, or don't do the update because
Edge. It's Edge.
Yeah, so
They
people
call it
freak out.
Microsoft malware, right?
So they're doing throttled availability on this, which just means they're releasing to a small set of computers, and then they'll expand out as time goes on to make sure everything goes smoothly. Two reasons for that. One is the bad PR they've been getting lately, which in my opinion is overblown. That's why we don't normally report on those articles. But the other reason is they're making a change to the start menu. And anytime you make a change to the primary interface that people have with the computer, that's a big risk. And so they're slowly kind of pushing this one out. You've probably heard mention of it over the last few months because there's things like the live tiles are changing. Microsoft, they track a lot of telemetry. They know how people use their system, and they know that literally nobody uses live tiles. So they've been phasing that out. They're switching into some transparent tiles and things. The taskbar is going to get a little bit bigger, so it's a little more touch-friendly. A lot of stuff on your taskbar has small UI elements, which is just not a touch-friendly experience. So some of that stuff is coming in, and that's all going to roll out. So it's a significant change to the UI. And that's why I wanted to mention it here on the podcast, is if you're supporting a network full of Windows machines and this kind of change rolls out, expect your end users to notice. This isn't an update that'll go ignored.
Yeah, and it's not just the big change in the UI, but I would think that the idea that they're changing out how they're rolling this out would also be a pretty massive thing that from what I was reading, it seemed like they were kind of like going, well, you hate it when we hit you with everything in the kitchen sink all at one time. How about... let's see how this works. I'll give you a couple of changes, and if it doesn't make you want to go out and commit harikiri, then I'll give you a couple of more, and we'll see how that works. I kind of like that idea that it's not going to be these massive differences in what I'm experiencing, or maybe cause me issues with my operating system, and then have to roll all this stuff back. And I like the idea of the piecemeal.
Now, one change that I'm on the lookout for. I use Alt-Tab to switch between windows all the time.
Yeah,
Alt-Tab, it's easy. You switch between windows, jump around all you want. They're introducing a new feature in Microsoft Edge, which I don't use, so I guess it won't hurt me that much. But if you're in Edge, Alt-Tab will actually move between the tabs of Edge.
So how do you tell, though, if you want to change from Alt-Tab or Alt-Tab over to a notebook or something?
You
That's
minimize Edge, most likely.
So it defeats the shortcut being friendly if you've got to take some other action. So I know you've got Windows key tab as well, which gives you the more graphical way to be able to pick a window. So I don't know if they're pushing us to that. So I haven't seen that yet. That update hasn't applied to my laptop yet. So, but as soon as I see it, I'm curious, because that could really impact the way my muscle memory of interacting with the system.
And let me tell you, for someone who Windows operating systems for forever, a little bit of Linux on the back end, right? But then switched to Mac 6 years ago.
Oh, that was the hardest part.
And to this day, when I right click, I'm looking for delete. It just doesn't exist. It's moved to trash.
Yes. Yeah.
6 years as my primary. I'm still looking for right click. I'm like, son of a bitch. It's not. It is not delete. It's moved to trash. Stupid.
And it says it's adding Alt-Tab in Edge and in Xbox Game Pass. So probably the same. Whatever the functionality is there to.
Somebody in the comment section said, "Let's be honest, this is just a big promo for their Game Pass thing."
Yeah, did we mention Game Pass?
Yeah.
If we were a consumer electronics show, we would definitely cover the Game Pass, because it is going to change that market of how video games are sold. But anyhow, not really IT news.
Not today.
Not today.
All right, our next article is at howtogeek.com. What's new in Ubuntu 20.10 Groovy Gorilla? And I love Ubuntu because it's always the alliteration and always the animals. So Groovy Gorilla is what's going on now, and we've got some updates there as well. So can I Alt-Tab within
Yeah, it works just fine on Ubuntu.
Perfect.
So 20.10 is the new release, just came out. 20.04, which came out back in April, is their long-term support release, their LTS. So in a business production environment, you want to run 20.04. You don't want to run 20.10. 20.10 is one of their limited support releases, and that means that it will get 9 months of support, and that's it. And that's because 21.04 will come out, and they expect you to upgrade to that. And then 21.10 will come out, and then 22.04 will be the next LTS version. So, that's the rotation that they're on. So this is really designed to be like a preview of what's coming in 22.04, right? So in a year and a half or 2 years or however long that is. So when you take a look at something like this, it's in your lab or on your own individual machine. That's where you'd want to run 20.10 if you're dying to get some of these features. The features that are in it aren't really all that significant unless you're running like on a Raspberry Pi. So there have been some big kernel updates and things that are packaged in 20.10 that make it run better on a Raspberry Pi. They're working on getting better video driver support and so on. ZFS has been moved out of experimental and now considered production ready inside of 20.10, although 20.10 itself isn't really considered production ready. So that means that it looks like, unless something changes, Canonical is going to be ready to back ZFS in 22.04.
I did like some of their user-friendly updates that they were putting in there, like the fact that you don't have to go to power off to get to a restart button. There's now just a restart button.
Yeah, that's always been counterintuitive.
Some very minor, but I think useful
user experience
experience stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this kind of like Fedora and Red Hat, where like one is their test one and then the other one?
Yeah, you wouldn't use Fedora in production, but you absolutely would use RHEL.
Yeah, real man does. He doesn't. He lives life on the edge, Don.
Not somebody who's paid to support it. Well, unless you're paid by the support.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're paid by the hour, then,
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and launch this new one. All right, our next article comes from BBC.com. Mysterious Robin Hood hackers donating stolen money. Now, this doesn't mean people hacking from Robin Hood, the app, right? We're just referring to people that are stealing from, well, regular people.
I didn't think about that when I grabbed this article, but yeah, the Robin
That
Hood
was my
companies
first
had
thought. I
their
was
own
like,
problems.
oh no, Robin Hood got hit again? No, they did not.
So in this case, we've got dark side hackers, as they're called in the article, but anyhow, just hackers that are doing ransomware and other things to basically steal money from companies. And I guess at some point they felt bad about it. And so they decided instead of being the bad guys, they wanted to be the good guys and give back. And so they made two $10,000 Bitcoin donations to companies. Now, Bitcoin obviously is something that can be tracked. And so they don't know who the person is, but they know where this money has come from and gone to. And so while like Children's International was one of the charities that received it, they received basically this anonymous donation, but it's easily tracked back to the wallet that originated it. So we know that it is ill-gotten gains that was part of this ransomware attack that this hacker gang has created. And so while you could say there's like a good side, at least the hackers are trying to be nice, ultimately the Children International charity had to reject the donation. You can't accept stolen money even if you're a charity, and that's effectively what this is. So the hackers had some kind of reverse. I guess they just decided they didn't want to be the bad guys, but too late. You're already the bad guys.
Yeah. Plus, it seemed like and good for the charities. Both of the charities that were donated to, their response was like, if this is ill-gotten gains, we want no part of it anyway.
Yep.
So good for them for saying, I don't want you to go out and steal from me. I just want people to be altruistic and give us money when we need it, and we're doing well. So the more the merrier. You don't have to go out and pilfer people's pockets
and
to give it to me.
Hopefully it brings awareness to those charities too,
Yeah.
of people that might not have heard of them, and I bet they make out in the long run with the awareness from that. So that maybe is a good side of it. I kind of feel like the hacker group Anonymous kind of has this same vibe where some people like look up to them as like, oh, that's such a cool thing going on because of kind of some of the things that they attack or like specific social causes that are going on at that time. And so, maybe this is just an effort by this group to say, hey, we want that kind of, we want people to look at ransomware as a good thing now.
Right. Now we're hacktivists instead of thieves.
Exactly. Yeah.
One thing they didn't say in there, though, so these guys donated $20,000 in Bitcoin, right? But it doesn't say how much was actually in the wallet in the first place, which they can figure out, right? So let's say it was $2 million. Yeah. And they just gave away $20,000, right?
They've got expenditures. Come on.
Yeah.
You think what the insurance is on a Ferrari?
That's true. Yeah, tires.
Well, so the
oil.
question is, are they? So the charities have this money now. Are they able to look back at the blockchain records and see, who was defrauded and say, okay, we're going to spread this money across,
No, not really. I
Doesn't
mean,
go that
I guess
far.
they can. They can see what wallet put money into what other wallet, so they know that, but they don't necessarily know who's attached to the wallet. So
true.
it would come down to like if one of the hacked companies used a wallet that was published somewhere publicly, like a company that maybe accepts Bitcoin payments, then maybe there they could figure it out, but usually not.
All right. So what do you do with that money then? You just give it to the government?
It says they have to give it back. Now, in this case, normally you'd say, well, how do you do that?
To the
right?
hacker? Yeah.
But there was a company called, what was the company called? The Giving Block.
Because otherwise they arrest you then for donating to, to hackers.
So the Giving Block was like an intermediary that handles these transactions via Bitcoin and then turns them into cash or whatever. So the Giving Block is getting that money back to them, and then they've got to figure out what to do. So that company is going to have a bit of a problem.
Yeah. The problem of having $20,000 to figure out what to do with.
Yeah.
It's stolen.
Like
if you find a kilo of
Peter's over there,
cocaine on the side of the road, that's
he's
not
selling
like,
that.
First of all, you will never find out that I found a kilo of cocaine.
Peter's got so much more energy these days.
Man, he is up.
Peter jogged to Vermont this morning.
He lost like 40 pounds.
He did the Appy Trail in like 12 minutes.
Just full-on Forrest Gump. All right. Our next article is from PCMag.com. Google says Chinese hackers are posing as McAfee Antivirus to Phish victims. And I just wonder if, John McAfee's actually doing this.
McAfee's jokes on them. He's going to pose as Chinese hackers.
I mean, he's just trying to pay for his legal defense at this point, I'm thinking. So, it says Google's security team has spotted the suspected Chinese hacking group, Apartment 31, emailing links designed. I don't know. Isn't it Apartment? APT?
Yeah.
Dang it. That was a guess. Designed to ultimately download malware to spy on victims' computers. In the real world, APT stands for apartment.
So they're looking at their apartments.
Well, I thought, that's a cool name.
It's Daniel. It's advanced persistent threat, right?
Yes, advanced persistent threat. You were almost there.
Don's like, I know you're wrong, but it's this, right?
Yeah.
Well,
I don't want to be like Peter over here.
Last thing I want to do is look like an idiot.
There we go. So it's election season here in the United States.
I've heard that.
If you are outside of the United States, I apologize. But for us, it's election season, and
I think they've heard about it too.
Yeah. What's happening?
The big hot topic is election fraud, and many of our local governments have switched to using electronic voting, which is obviously susceptible to this. Although mail-in voting is much better, so it's a shit show, right? So let's just cut to the chase on that one. But so we're going to start seeing more and more outlets reporting on this. And what Google is reporting on here is that Chinese hackers are actively doing work trying to subvert some of the voting systems. And in this case, they are posing as McAfee, which, in my opinion, if you're going to be successful, maybe pick a different product to impersonate.
Yeah, Sophos or...
But basically, they are doing social engineering attacks. They're reaching out to people and saying their machines are infected, and they're offering to help. And they're offering them what is actually a legitimate demo download of McAfee Antivirus, but it has malware alongside it. And they get you to install it. Your machine is now compromised. And so they're able to deploy ransomware and other things with it. So that's the plan. However, there's a little problem. Like in this particular article, what they're talking about has not really been effective. So no voting machines or supervisor of election or anything like that has been compromised. But we have had our first article come through. We'll jump over to this other one. Peter, do you have the other article?
Yeah, it's from the AP, apnews.com. The report says ransomware disables Georgia County election database. And so I think what's so concerning about this one is we've got a different way, the elections are being handled this time around with all the mail-in votings. You said one of the things you've got to do is you've got to confirm signatures. And so we've got these databases that have those past signatures. And if that's gone, what do we do with all these ballots that we have?
How do we validate the signatures, right? Yeah.
Look at that, Peter. If we ever talk about sports or election process, like Peter's our go-to guy.
Hey, Kanye 2020, man, I'm all in.
You're all
this
up on
election
Little
season,
Yeezy or
so,
whatever.
Yeah, sure. I don't know if that's the same guy.
I don't know.
Aren't those shoes?
Yeah, that's it. They're his shoes, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. I'm like, is he talking about shoes or a person?
They're like $1,000 sneakers, aren't they?
If anybody can fix this
orthotics.
country, he's got as good a chance, right? I mean,
if anyone can fix this country, it is not him.
All right. Well, in this scenario, an election machine actually did get affected, right? So, and ransomware, I think, is going to probably be the main form we see on this. The trick here is it's kind of denial of service in a way, right? Takes the database down. Now we can't count those votes. That's bad. But there is a darker side to this, which is once a machine gets hit by ransomware, you don't really know what it's doing. And so in theory, hackers could be exfiltrating the data, which honestly wouldn't be that bad. But if they are able to modify the data while it's encrypted, you wouldn't know it. And then if they paid the ransom and got it decrypted, the votes could have been changed. We wouldn't know. That would be a problem, right? So this is a big red flag that says, we just don't have the proper security in place for our election machines.
So, Don, this is where I'm going to jump on your bandwagon. Something as large as the federal government, with all their funds and resources, you think they would be able to not only the money, but the power to say, we're going to create the federal government infrastructure of internet, and that's the only people that can get on that. We're not going to use publicly used internet capabilities to access these things. Is going to be completely closed. You think they would be able to do that?
You talking about the deep state?
Well, so
I don't think people would trust it. That's the problem. If you centralize something like that, then you've got
not so much centralized, but just segmented, like put aside, walled off from you and I. Like there's a lot of stuff we don't see anyway, or nor could. It would be against the law.
I don't think you even have to do that, though, right? Okay, I'm going to say something here that's going to be shocking.
Okay,
right?
Hold on.
Because, because I've said so many times how much BS blockchain is.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But here we have this technology, blockchain, that is almost perfectly designed for this, right?
It's true.
You could set up a public voting system where when you voted, you had your token assigned to you to cast your vote. It goes in the blockchain. It's immutable. If anybody modifies it, it's right there. It's in the public record. It's decentralized. Like, we've got the technology.
Did we just go dark?
I could, like, the only thing that I think would be crazier if Don said, all right, now hear me out. Drones take your ballot and you hand it to
With
the
VR,
drone.
VR.
Yeah. And augmented reality, you get to watch it go out there.
Yeah. I think, blockchain is stupid and pointless for most of its implementations, but for something like this,
That's
a
great.
public immutable ledger, I mean, that's what it's designed to do.
But the problem here is you're county by county. So, if this was a nationwide thing or even a statewide thing where you had 50 people to convince of, hey, let's do this system.
Right.
I mean, if I drive 15 miles across the border to the next county, they're voting a completely different way than we are here, and that's just nuts.
Yeah.
And I got scared when I first saw this article because it says the Gainesville Times, and we're in Gainesville, Florida, but this was Gainesville, Georgia, is where this was actually affected. But we had something here just last week that was national news. I know in Alachua County and other parts of Florida too. The email that supposedly came from Proud Boys, threatening people, but it was Iran, right?
Yeah, it was Iran.
Iran,
Yeah, they tracked
yeah.
it back. Yeah.
When I saw that email, I was like, yeah, that's not that.
Yeah. Yeah. Signed Proud Boys.
Yeah.
I was confused by that one because, why would the Iranians want President Trump to win again?
And these things, because I get confused with that too, because I'm like, well, they're
See, I didn't take it that way. I took it as like to basically say, so if I were to come to you and say, you're going to vote for so-and-so, obviously so-and-so is bad, and I don't want that. So I'm going to vote for the opposite of that. So it's like
maybe that's it.
I think it's just chaos is the goal, because you're
Well,
right.
yeah.
But you're going to have some people who are
true.
scared and frightened out of their minds and don't tell anybody about it. Then you're going to have other people report it, and then everyone get mad and say, oh, now we really need to go out and vote because this is what we're seeing. So I think it's just chaos.
Plus, they haven't met the rednecks of Alachua County, apparently. Like, listen here, you son of a bitch. You going to come over here and try to make me vote for somebody? I'll kill you.
Yeah, hold on. I'm in the Proud Boys, and I didn't get this email. Cletus, did you know we were doing this?
Billy.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's a mess.
All right. Well, I am sure we will have plenty more election news over the next 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah, we're recording next week on Election Day.
Yeah?
Are we really?
So we will have no news at that point, or probably for like 2 weeks after that. No one knows what's going on.
Oh, it'll be a good time, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
it'll be a great time. Speaking of a great time, coming up, we have we're going to do Jeopardy. Actually, we have Cert Nexus Jeopardy. Don mentioned earlier we're wrapping down the cybersecurity
Awareness Month.
We're starting up Cert Nexus month next month, and so we're talking about IoT, AI, all of Don's favorite things there, and so we're going to join Zach Memos as the host. That is November 13th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to be playing Jeopardy. We got an all-new board, all-new setup here. Going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to have some fun contestants and all that kind of stuff. So check that out. We'll definitely talk about that more before that comes up. And speaking of a good time as well, if you are watching this Thursday right when it comes out, hi, Brian Bauer. We do have a podcast this afternoon. It is Lessons from the Dark Web, using a Raspberry Pi Onion router for secure internet access. It's Thursday, October 29th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. But don't worry, if you're catching this after that, it will be archived and will be available at itpro.tv/webinars. Same link to go register or to see the archive. So go ahead and check those out at itpro.tv/webinars. And finally, head over to go.itpro.tv. You can get a coupon code for 30% off your personal membership. You can also request a team trial if you're part of a team and learn about all the great things available for teams like the Pro Portal and tracking and all that good stuff over at go.itpro.tv/Technado. So a lot coming up there.
What?
Let me do it again. Yeah. Jeopardy, webinar, coupon.
Jeopardy's going to be cool.
Jeopardy is going to be cool. Yeah, we've got the new board because we bought those buzzers that work and we haven't gotten to use those in a while because we've been playing Spin It to Win It.
Yeah, I've seen the mock-up of the board. It looks really awesome.
Yeah, it does look cool. And so, we were working with the people over at at CertNexus on those questions, so they will be very good questions, probably stolen right off of the exams.
Questions will be amazing.
Yeah, best questions you've ever seen. Everyone's saying it. So, well, again, thank you to Roy today for his help in understanding APIs and scaring the crap out of us, and thank you to you guys, and thank you everyone watching at home. We'll see you next week right here on Technado with Don Pizzette.